afternoon. I'm David Kraft, Editor-in-Chief of WorkBoat Magazine at WorkBoat.com, and welcome to this week's installment of Ask the Editor, and that's where you, the viewer and reader, ask us anything and to check our knowledge, of which is very questionable. This week's question comes from Justin, who works on a Coast Guard, as an officer in a Coast Guard buoy tender. And what Justin wants to know is tonnage. That's the question. He says WorkBoat is about the coolest thing you can find for free. Well, thanks, Justin. But I was at a brewery tour last week, and they have free beer, 4 or 5 different types. It's really good. So I don't know. Free WorkBoat, free beer. It's a tough choice. WorkBoat is a great publication that fills my nautical cup monthly without a question. One thing that would be nice, and I think every mariner wonders, would be to add the tonnage of the vessels when you detail their specs. Half the dream of boat gazing through the pages is pondering if you're qualified to drive it. Please let me know if adding this small tidbit into your specification boxes could become commonplace. Well, that's a good question. Tonnage is very confusing. I've been confused for 18 years. And that is why I went to an expert, Jonathan Parrott, who is a Vice President of New Design Development with Jensen Maritime Consultants in Seattle, for help with answering this question. And of course, Jonathan writes back, "Ha! Tonnage confuses everybody," he says. There are no quick answers to tonnage questions. He said in the U.S., we can add measure boats 4 different ways. The 3 most common are simplified tonnage, where it's valid only for boats under 79 feet. And simply it's the length times the breadth times the depth multiplied by 0.0067 to get gross tonnage. Now I don't think there's anything simplified about that, but that's what it's called. ITC tonnage is convention tonnage used internationally, and he said it's a reasonably sane and accurate means of measuring the volume of a vessel for tonnage. And then there's U.S. regulatory, which is one of the most arcane and confusing ways to measure tonnage. Basically, that's when you start close to the ITC tonnage, and then you use tricks like tonnage openings and deep framing to reduce the vessel's gross tonnage. And that's how, basically, you can get a 200-foot passenger vessel to add measure under 100 gross tons, only in the U.S. And Jonathan said, "I hope this doesn't confuse the issue." I said, "It most certainly does, Jonathan." Thus I went back and said, is there a simplified good measure I can just put into the spec box that makes the most sense? He said that's probably deadweight tonnage is usually a good bit of information. This is the amount of variable loads the vessel can carry. The maximum displacement weight minus the fixed light ship weight. So there you go. If we add anything to our spec box, it'll be deadweight tonnage. Well, thanks, Justin, for writing, and I will be back next week with the next installment of Ask the Editor. Now it's off to the brewery tour. Thanks.